Hey everyone, Brian Zane here. Well, the JCW vlog I posted a couple of weeks ago led to a little bit of a scheduling shakeup here on the channel, but that means now you get 2 weeks in a row of classic pay-per-view reviews. Last week it was the inaugural In Your House pay-per-view, and this week I'm taking a look at the first Great American Bash pay-per-view under the WCW banner, the Great American Bash 1989 Glory Days from July 23rd at the Baltimore Arena in Baltimore, Maryland. This show was nominated by Alex Firehart over on patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. This is widely considered one of the greatest Great American Bashes of all time because of the main event between Ric Flair and Terry Funk. I have definitely covered this angle in all the wrong order. I've gone all over the map of 89 here on this channel, covering this particular feud of Flair and Funk very much out of sequence, but I think this show here, covering Bash 89, will help fill the gap and then make it just more of a, you can actually see the full storyline as it progresses. 14,500 folks have sold out the arena. 140,000 people ordered the show on pay-per-view. Jim Ross and Bob Caudle are on the call for this show, but before we hear from them, we get a very interesting cold open for a wrestling show. It's a farm.
Welcome to Baltimore, Maryland, and the high-intensity action of Glory Days.
They're contrasting the action you'll see tonight to the serenity of the farms in Worthington Valley, and wow, here's a town, and wow, here's Baltimore Arena. Now it's time for the show. Then after the fancy opening with the American graphics and the intro by Ross and Caudle, we go to our first matchup of the evening. Now if you see at the start of the show, you'll see 2 rings right next to each other. We know War Games is happening on this evening, but there's also another reason to have 2 rings back to back. It's the finals of the $50,000 Triple Chance 2-ring Battle Royal, winner take all for $50,000. Here are the 14 names involved. There was a series of Battle Royals on the local loops in the weeks leading up to this, and the winners of each of those Battle Royals, they got a crown, and then they were the finalists in the final Battle Royal to open this show. You see all the guys coming down with their very cheap crowns. Some of them are just kind of holding them like they don't want them. Others are really feeling the gimmick and wearing them. It's a very big range here, and the rules of this matchup are they start in one ring. They got to eliminate guys into the other rings. There's only one side you can eliminate somebody else on. It's got to be over the rope to the other ring. Then those guys who go to the other ring start a new Battle Royal. And so then the winner of the first Battle Royal and the winner of the second Battle Royal will then face off to see who gets the $50,000. Also, kind of a random note, really crazy seeing Big Scott Hall at this point in his career here in WCW. The match begins. We see new manager Theodore Long, who recently put the Skyscrapers together. He's looking on from the stage. Ranger Ross and Ron Simmons are the first 2 to enter the second ring, so their Battle Royal begins. There's some weird sound interference going on, not only in this match, but also throughout the show. There's just a litany of technical issues, and if you watch the network version or Peacock or whatever, they throw up a little lower third saying this has been restored to the best possible thing we could do because of technical difficulties and whatever, and you will see that as the show goes on. Dan Spivey starts throwing power bombs like it's nothing. Ring 2 is filling up, and we get more final eliminations as Ring 1 is down to Sid Vicious and Brian Flyin Brian. Brian gives a valiant effort, but he launches himself over the top rope into Ring 2 conveniently, so Sid wins the first Battle Royal. Ring 2, we're down to Spivey, Mike Rotundo, and Dr. Death. Rotundo is meant to miss a clothesline, but Steve Williams gives him nothing to duck, so he just throws himself out like a dummy. A moment later, Rotundo trips his former Varsity Club member from outside. That allows Spivey to take him out from behind. We're down to the Skyscrapers, one-on-one. Hold on a minute, playa, it's Theodore Long. He says there is unity within the Skyscrapers, so he has declared that the men will split the prize money, give that man his crown. The audience seems really pleased with this heel team winning like this. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It's an interesting, I like the idea of the second chance Battle Royal. I think that's kind of a neat way to utilize the 2 rings in a non-War Games environment. I think it's just the funniest ending to have the baddies as the finalist and then like, nah, we're just gonna stop and take the prize money. That is just great heel behavior there. I love that. And now a word from Terry Funk.
I've come to make a plea to you simple-minded people about our endangered species. I'm talking about the humpback whales. I'm talking about wolves, polar bears, the whooping crane. But the most endangered species of all is moi. I've changed the rules. I'm a demon now.
Because I am making the promise to you today that
They dump out of that real quick, and JR tosses to Gordon Solie of the Wrestling News Network in the interview zone with Theodore Long. Solie says that was a pretty cool move they pulled out there, and Long is very excited about what happened. He says they're ready to take on Ricky Steamboat, the Steiners, Ric Flair, anyone and everyone. Well, hey, here are a couple of guys you just saw in the last match as Wild Bill Irwin takes on Flyin Bryan. Pillman's still a relative newcomer to the sport. He debuted 3 years prior, but he only recently joined Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, and he's put together a nice win streak. It does seem to be they are positioning him as a star to watch. He's off to a hot start, nice headlock takeover after running up the turnbuckle, kind of like a mild Dudley Dog. He keeps working the arm. As this match goes on, I love this little slip from Bob Caudle where he's like, I'm really excited to see the flying dudes later tonight. Bill with the cutoff, he's shouting at Pillman and he says, you want to fly? Fly out of here. Nice. Irwin squeezing the life out of Flyin Bryan, working him over for a good while. Lots more shouting. Pillman's thrown to the outside and thuds into the timekeeper's table. Keep your ears open for a Klondike Bill reference.
Klondike Bill, retired former grappler. Many of the fans will remember him.
Pillman capitalizes on a mistake and goes on this big comeback. From the far side of the ring, he goes for a drop kick, but Irwin dodges it, all spine for Pillman. Wild Bill picks up his opponent, hucks him into the other ring. He gets into it with the ref as Bryan gets back up and leaps from the top of one ring onto Irwin in the other to win. I give it 2 stars out of 5. I love the finish, but everything before that just felt like a typical kind of white meat babyface wrestling match of the time period. Pillman's very impressive. I love the way Wild Bill gets his heat. He's a very shouty man. I love big shouters in my wrestling. And so I thought it was just, a great way to just get more fans accustomed to Brian Pillman. Solie is backstage with Paul E. Dangerously. They are moments away from his Tuxedo match with Jim Cornette. Paul E. says he's not concerned with winning the match. All he cares about is taking Jimmy Cornette OUT out. He says he knows that Cornette's knee has never fully recovered since falling off the scaffolding in 1986, still wearing a knee brace, and that is going to be Paul E.'s target. He says, I've stood on the beach when a hurricane comes in. I've leaned over the edge of the Empire State Building. I've even let Rob Lowe babysit my kids, which is a very, very narrowly timely reference to Rob Lowe at this point. And then he wraps it up by saying he's going to leave Cornette hobbled like a Vietnam veteran. Damn, okay, dog. Up next, our guest ring announcer, Jason Hervey of the Wonder Years, Eric Bischoff's future best friend, wearing a shirt with the biggest pockets you ever did see, introducing Johnny and Shane of the Dynamic Dudes and their Frisbees. They're going against the Skyscrapers. Again, you just saw these guys wrestle in the Battle Royal earlier. Why has Johnny Ace always looked like an old man? I don't understand it. They play Frisbee with a kid in the front. He seems thrilled about it. I feel so bad for Shane and Johnny every time I see them out here as the dudes, because how fair is it to come to a city like Baltimore, a hardcore wrestling town, and everyone's already kind of seen through the veneer of what the Dynamic Dudes are at this point, and now you're going against these two big, badass dudes in Spivey and Sid Vicious, who already showed up earlier tonight and got the fans on their side. So what do you think's going to happen? I will say the ladies seem to like them, but the dudes are not getting a great reaction in Baltimore. Big peanut head chants for Teddy, the cameraman going in hard on the Dome of Long. What a cheap-looking crown Ted has here. You're telling me with Ted Turner's money you couldn't get better fake crowns? The dudes are on the attack on Spivey, doing some double team moves, but Dangerous Dan briefly stops them. The dudes go for a cross body with a trip, but Johnny damn near lands on his head on the way down. There are huge "We Want Sid" chants and lots of approving cheers as Sid and Spivey beat Johnny up for a good while. Ace gets the tag to Shane, but he walks right into a sidewalk slam. Douglas is dumped to the outside, Long doing the funniest little manager stomps on him. Another tag to Sid, another massive pop, laying in a single clothesline, a bigger pop. The fans are loving this. Then Sid applies the dreaded kidney claw, and at this point, the crowd in Baltimore is almost turning on like everyone but Sid. It's Sid versus everyone else as far as they're concerned. Even when Dan Spivey is in the ring doing something, who is the partner of Sid, the fans are like, boo, we don't like that guy. We want Sid. We want Sid. Shane with some quick maneuvers, he makes the tag to Johnny and he goes on a big run. Sid kicks Johnny in the face to break up the pin. The Skyscrapers Skyscrapers go for a double team, but there's some friendly fire. Ace goes for a head scissors, but Sid puts a stop to all that. Spivey with an awful looking powerbomb. That was scary. It looks kind of like Johnny just slipped out of his arms, but that is the finish. I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5. This is about as close to a squash match as you could get, but it was entertaining. I was just very just tickled at the crowd reaction and how everyone was just big time fans of Sid there, almost to the point where it was detracting from his own tag team partner and manager. Gordon Soley's backstage with Cornette. What say you in response to Paul E. Dangerously's comments? Cornette admits that Dangerously is correct about his knee search, but this is a chance for Jim to get some satisfaction not only for himself but for everyone else who hates Dangerously. And he says, if you break one leg, I'll hop to you. If you break them both, I'll crawl to you like a reptile on my belly. And he says, you've copied me and my boys, you've tried to replace me, but the only way you'll replace me is if you put me in the ground. And he says, if there's one time for Jim Cornette to get physical, it's for tonight. And he says he's doing it for not just for himself, but the fans who've stuck by him despite all the nasty things he's done in the past. And this is just a great babyface promo. And something from watching this stuff again, as good as Cornette is, a terrific heel manager, I don't think his babyface run during this time gets enough love because he is just a really good, popular babyface. You listen to the reaction when they're making their way out for this Tuxedo match, and the babyface reaction that Cornette gets here after the evil, nasty things he and the Midnight Express have done up to this point. It's a really cool turnaround because once Paulie Dangerously comes into WCW and brings in the original Midnight Express to cause the face turn for Cornette, I think they're off to the races. And so, yeah, I think it's just, again, it's a really fun period to see Cornette not really changing his personality. He's just maybe being a little less, mean toward fans or whatever, but the fans have totally accepted him and they definitely want to see him beat up Dangerously. Heyman comes out to the Halloween theme as he brandishes a tennis racket. And like I said, Jim gets a huge pop for his own entrance. Corny gets the first shot in and removes the tux jacket, but Paul Lee has the dreaded powder and throws it in the eyes, taking that huge brick of a cell phone he has and slams it into JC's knee. Paul Lee strikes with what Jim Ross calls a somewhat feminine right hand, and he says, his trainer must have been named Bruce or Eric out of San Francisco. Damn, just some casual homophobia getting thrown around here. Heyman briefly forgets which leg to work in the corner. He uses his cummerbund to choke Cornette. Jim comes back and gives it right back to Dangerously. Cornette can hardly stand due to the damage to his leg. Again, Paulie just kind of attacking both legs indiscriminately at this point. Dangerously's feeling himself. He goes for a terrible elbow drop, but he misses. Suddenly, Jim fires up. He starts raining down punches. The shirt is now off. We get a headlock, a shoulder tackle that sends both men down. Dangerously grabs another handful of the white gimmick, but Cornette kicks it into Paul's face. He rips off the pants and Dangerously flees as the Louisville Slugger has won. I'm also going to give this match 2 stars out of 5. What would you expect from a pair of non-wrestling managers? That being said, I think it was highly entertaining. The crowd was definitely into it. The timing was all there. And yeah, they move like people who don't wrestle. And I think that is part of the charm of a match like this. Back in the interview zone, Gordon Soley is with Gary Hart, the manager of the Great Muta. He puts over how prestigious the TV title is, second only to the World Championship, and he reminds the fans that Muta is still unbeaten. He says that Muta is currently meditating, calling the powers of the Mystic Orient into his own being. Ooh, sounds exotic. Up next, a Tejas Tornado tag as the Varsity Club of Kevin Sullivan and Mike Rotundo take on the Steiner brothers, who were accompanied by Missy Hyatt and a hound dog. But where is Rick's biggest fan and Robin Green, I wonder? Anyway, this all began when the Varsity Club was teaming with the First Family, Rick Steiner and Eddie Gilbert. Rick got injured after Wrestle War, which got Scott Steiner brought up into the feud with them, and now we're going to have this big blow-off Texas Tornado matchup. The brawling has started. Paul East Powder still all over the ring. It's not going anywhere. Rick decks Kevin Sullivan with a chair, but Nivek responds by dropping Rick crotch first into the barricade. I love how he uses the table as a weapon here. Scott's thrown outside the ring. Rick goes back in. He gets double teamed. Then later, Rick throws Sullivan over his head and hits a power slam. I mean, the format of the Texas Tornado match means you're really getting 2 concurrent matches happening just elsewhere at different places that occasionally weave together. Rick with repeated headbutts to Sullivan's dick and balls falls. Now Rick goes to the outside, and it's 2-1 on Scott. I love this moment here at the end where Rick is knocked into Scott in the apron, and by doing so, Scott pulls down the top rope, which causes Rotunda to fly to the outside. Kevin picks up Rick. Scott dives onto both of them. That landing looks rough. The cover and the win. I'm going to give it 3 stars out of 5. This is a very entertaining match from start to finish. Just going right into the brawling, the chaos outside and in. And man, that finish, I'd never seen it done like that before. And that was so cool. This night, this whole show is full of just like awesome finishing sequences. That I think is one of the biggest takeaways I got from this show, and this finish is really one of my favorites. Gordon Soley's backstage with TV champ Sting and his buddy Eddie Gilbert. Sting says he's trying to stand still and tone it down to be in the right frame of mind for the match. He says he respects Muta and his style. He's still very intense and just goes to leave because he's got to get out of here. Gilbert chimes in after Sting leaves. He hypes up his buddy and says he does not trust Gary Hart, the manager. Up next, a match for the World Television Championship. They're billing it as the Battle of the Paint, as Sting defends the title against the Great Muta. Now, when I covered Wrestle War, my running gag for that one was calling him the Great Muta. And people were asking, why are you calling him that way? Are you being racist? Like, no, I'm just copying the way Jim Ross was saying it at the time. He would, every time, pronounce it Muta. And, you know, they eventually softened the T sound to make it Muta, as we all kind of generally call him that. But, I don't know, him saying Muta was funny to me. I love this shot here with Sting and Muta standing in opposite rings before the bell, and then when the match begins, Sting dives across the ropes onto Muta, and these guys are going balls to the wall from the very beginning. Muta immediately responds with the top rope judo chop, follows up with a handspring elbow in the corner. He goes to the moonsault, but Sting avoids it. He starts to hem up. He goes to the outside. Muta dives on top of Sting onto the floor. Back in, back out. Sting dives over the top rope and lands on his feet to do more punishment. Things finally slow down. Muta's got the reverse chin lock in. He works his way to an abdominal stretch. Sting dodges another handspring elbow and starts making this fiery comeback. Muta goes for the sputa, but the red mist hits Nick Patrick in the face. The Patrick flop. Muta with the moonsault. Tommy Young comes in after a beat and makes a 2 count. We get a back suplex by Sting. The referee makes a 3 count. Sting appears to have won the match, but suddenly Muta and Hart take the TV title and leave with the belt. There's a big bullshit chant by the audience. We get a replay which shows that both men had their shoulders up, but the referee counted it anyway. Huh. 3.5 stars out of 5. I love just the speed and the pace of this matchup. The fact they went so strong out the gate, which is big move, big move, big move, just to, you know, get them, the crowd that is, fired up. I thought that was beautiful, and I thought it was a very well done match. Finish was a bit confusing, and I think that was probably by design because they would announce later in the show that due to all this confusion, the TV title had been held up, and so they're going to crown a new champion later. But I think this was, a really fun match, and, you know, Sting and Muta, their careers are so intertwined. They had a great rivalry during this period and a great way to legitimize Muta as he's still, you know, getting more known in the States and building his legend. And so, yeah, this is not the end of these two wrestling here, but it's just a great matchup. Gordo is backstage with Lexo. He's got a match coming up with Ricky Steamboat for the U.S. title. Lex maintains he's the greatest U.S. champion of all time and that no one dictates how he should defend the belt. There's a no DQ stipulation in this matchup here, and he's protesting it, and he wants a straight title match, and if he doesn't get it, he will not compete. And then Soley chimes in at the end, is it arrogance or is it prudence? That match is up next for the U.S. title as Lex Luger defends against Ricky Steamboat. As we saw at Wrestle War, Luger lost the U.S. title to Michael Hayes. He would win it back a few weeks later. At Clash of the Champions, Luger rescued Steamboat from an attack by Terry Funk, but then turned around and jumped Steamboat as well, turning heel. Steamboat got very fired up about that attack and demands a no DQ match for the title here. Ricky is led to the ring by his beautiful family, also riding to the ring on a giant surfboard, carried by a bunch of extras whilst wielding a Komodo dragon, and the Komodo dragon has a spiky leather vest on. Now that is an entrance. Luger's on the microphone and says Ricky has 30 seconds to waive the no DQ rule or he's getting out of here. He gets in the promoter Gary Juster's face. He has had it. After some talking, Steamboat finally relents and allows it to be a straight up match. Steamboat's off to a hot start here. I love on the commentary how Jim Ross brings up these guys have both been rookies of the year in their respective rookie years, and they are both 3-time U.S. champions. I like the kind of comparisons between the two. Lex gets on top for a bit, brawling on the outside and at the barricade. Back in the ring, Lex shows off the power, but Steamboat with the tenacity. He keeps getting laid out with clotheslines, but he's able to keep getting up. He is punch drunk. What a sell. Steamer starts backing Luger in the corner. Tommy Young grabs Ricky's arm, which allows a cheap shot by the champ. That was rude. Luger telegraphs a backdrop. Steamboat catching him with a ridiculous-looking neckbreaker. Then Luger launches himself out of the ring. Luger's on the apron. Steamboat's on the inside. Ricky goes for a slam that backfires and almost costs him. Lex goes up top himself, which seems rare. Ricky catches him into a Beal. Luger stays in the fight. He ends up backdropping Ricky from one ring to the other. Whoa, that looked like a scary fall. Luger now grabs a chair from the outside. Shades of his betrayal at Fort Bragg. Steamboat slingshots Luger into the corner. Luger hits himself in the face with the chair. Oh no, but Steamboat has snapped and shoves the ref. He beats Luger with the chair to get himself disqualified. But the beating continues. He's chasing Luger like a madman with the chair, running up the ramp after him. I give it 4 stars out of 5. A disappointing DQ finish aside, I thought it was a really good matchup. And again, I'm always impressed when I see Lex Luger, performing above what I perceive to be his abilities. I feel like 89 in particular are some of the best Luger matches I've ever seen. And so it's really cool once again to see him here. I thought Steamboat did a good job. And just kind of the animosity I love seeing that play out in wrestling, when the emotions are too much and I'm gonna hit you because I hate you so much. I thought that was just very well done. We go to the fabulous Freebirds and the Samoan SWAT team in the promo zone. Jimmy Jam Garvin and Michael Hayes, they're not worried about their chances in War Games because they've got a pair of beasts who came to America on a boat. Hayes tosses it over to Boom Boom Gordy, who says they're gonna end the war because they've got the bombs and they're gonna drop a bomb on Baltimore and it's gonna explode right through your television set. Then on the other side of the coin, we hear from the Midnight Express. Sweet Stan Lane doing all the talking for he and Bobby Eaton. Then Dr. Death flies into the shop because he's calling himself a bird hunter. He's looking for some bug spray to kill the Samoans, as he says. Then Animal and Hawk enter the shot. Steve says he knows they've had their differences, but they're all tough cookies and will have each other's back. Then LOD shouts for a little bit, and that's the promo. Up next, it's War Games. The fabulous Freebirds and the Samoan SWAT team take on the Midnight Express, the Road Warriors, and Dr. Death Steve Williams. So after the chaos and confusion of the tag title match at Wrestle War, the belts were held up and there was a tournament to crown new champions. And along the way, in the process of getting to the end where the fabulous Freebirds beat the Midnight Express to become the new champions, there's been a lot of cross-brawling and cross-interfering between all of these parties. And like I said, Steve Williams recently kicked out of the Varsity Club, and now he's been aligned with the Midnight for this particular match. And what a shock! The heel team gets the numbers advantage in this one. We also see Paulie Dangerously and Jim Cornette back out to accompany their respective tag teams. The LOD coming riding in the back of those Harleys. The action begins with Bobby Eaton and Jimmy Garvin. Eaton's getting worked over in the cage while at one point Hayes talking a lot of trash, but still has to censor himself.
You don't mess with the Freebirds! The world champion, you scum!
After the first 5 minutes, in comes Terry Gordy, who begins to attack Eaton. 2 minutes pass, in comes Dr. Death to even the odds, and he's a house of fire. We get a slugfest with Gordy and Williams. Williams slamming Gordy repeatedly into the cage ceiling. Hard to believe they'll be future tag team partners in Japan and WCW. Samu comes in next for Team Batty, Eaton taking on all sorts of punishment, but then Road Warrior Animal enters the fray. The crowd is ballistic for it. Animal hits the ropes to awkwardly go from one ring to the other, then follows up with a vault over the ropes in the other direction. Hayes is telling Fatu to kill, eat, as he is the next man in. A couple minutes later, it's time for Sweet Stan. It's a lot of brawling, folks. Not much else to really talk about at this point. I mean, because think about where we are here. This is early War Games. They haven't implemented, tables and trash cans and flying off the top yet. Michael Hayes, the final man to enter for his team. He's dropping fools with DDTs left and right and gets to strutting button. Finally, the match officially begins as in comes Hawk. He starts things off with a double clothesline off the top to SST, a big old flying shoulder tackle. Here's a weird spot. Gordy grabs Hawk and brings him to Animal. Like what? He's expecting Animal to hit him or something? Good thing Hawk ducks. Hawk now goes for Garvin's neck repeatedly, gets him up in a hangman neckbreaker. Garvin surrenders and the good guys win. But after the bell, Animal is left behind and assaulted briefly by the baddies. The good guys seem to forget that there is a whole other door on the opposite of the structure, opposite end from where they are, because they're like, oh god, we can't get in. Like, yo, there's 2 doors on either end. They're only guarding one of them. But anyway, Hawk just breaks through and chases the baddies away. I'm gonna give this 3.5 stars out of 5. It's tough to accurately or fairly, I guess, grade a War Games match because so much of what happens takes place in an unofficial capacity, but I think just watching it and seeing the ebb and the flow, the story being told of like every time the advantage changes, I thought that was really well done. Some of the stuff we saw, like Gordy and Steve Williams showing off the strength, that was really cool. Seeing Animal and Hawk coming into clean house, like that's, 2 hot tags back to back essentially. Really fun. So yeah, I wouldn't consider this one of the best War Games matches, but it's definitely not one of the worst ones. I would put it kind of right in the middle. Gordon is backstage with the 6-time world champion Ric Flair, and he wants to know, why are you coming back to the ring when your neck is such a target? Flair's very serious in this promo. He's not hollering, he's not going woo, he's not talking about styling or profiling in this promo. He is very much down to business and very low voice as he talks. He says the only way he can take another step forward in his career is to go out there and find out what his future is. He puts over Terry Funk, but then Flair warns that he feels like he's at 120%, and if he's truly that, then Funk will be in for the fight of his career. And Gordon says, you haven't had a warm-up match since your injury at Wrestle War. Will your timing be off? And Flair admits that out of ego and pride, he didn't want to face anyone before Funk, but he'll find out how he truly is in a little while. In our main event, Terry Funk hopes to reclaim the NWA World Heavyweight Championship when he challenges the 6-time champion in Ric Flair. Back at Wrestle War in May, it was the end of that classic trilogy between Flair and Ricky Steamboat. Flair wins the match and the championship there, and then right afterward, one of the judges of the match, Terry Funk, who had been retired at this point, or semi-retired, he attacks Flair afterward, gives him a pile driver on the table. It's one of the most shocking heel turns of the day and really set in motion this great rivalry between the two of them. The whole thing was that Funk was insulted because Flair didn't want to have a title match with him because Funk was not in the top 10 rankings. And so Funk takes this very personally, starts fighting a lot of jobbers, he starts killing them with pile drivers, and that works him up to number 4 in the rankings. So he finally got what he wanted, he got this title match, and he's also promising a big surprise for later in the evening. That was cut off when the promo earlier in the night started dying. That was a line that they omitted or they cut from that. So he has a surprise, and it seems the surprise is Gary Hart and a boatload of police protection, because the whole thing was, Funk says in his promo, I don't work for anyone, I'm on my own, I'm my own man, and he immediately brings out a manager, which the announcers bring that contrast up. Then Ric Flair gets the golden shower entrance, he's got 2 girls on each arm, and is still kissing ladies on the way to the ring. The fight begins outside the ring, it bites a forehead, then it struts. Trading strikes, Flair fires up with a knife-edge chops, but Funk drives Rick into the ring post. Fighting on the apron, Flair goes to suplex Funk to the outside. They both go tumbling down. More trading strikes, taking turns poking each other in the eyes. I enjoy the fact that both guys are working heel in this matchup here. I mean, Flair is the babyface in this feud, unequivocally, but it's great because they're both nasty, vicious, dirty fighters. They're pulling out all the stops. They're both cheating a lot, but the fans want to see Flair do it more. Flair counters a pile driver attempt, hits one of his own, and Funk with some incredible selling.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Then we get another pile driver. He's got the figure 4 locked in. Gary Hart with a well-timed distraction. Funk grabs the branding iron and dinks Flair with it. Flair is now busted open as Funk delivers a devastating pile driver, but Flair's foot is under the ropes. Funk goes outside, peels back the padding, goes for another pile driver on the concrete, but Flair powers out. Interesting attack by the Funker off the apron. Poor Jason Hervey and Klondike Bill looking on as Funk continues the assault on the neck. The branding iron comes back into play, but this time Flair dinks Funk, and now the Funker is bleeding. Flair goes for a knee lift in the corner, but misses. Funk capitalizes with a spinning toe hold, but Flair reverses it, goes for one of his own, but Funk rolls him up. Flair counters, gets the 3, and wins. Then he punches Gary Hart. Yay! But wait, in comes Great Muta, who mists Flair. Funk and Muta now assaulting the Nature Boy after the bell. Tommy Young gets shit-canned. Doug Dillinger tries to interject, but he gets wrecked too. Suddenly, in comes Sting to make the save. World and television champs working together to fight off Funk and Muta. We get a look at the main event for next year's Bash right there in the ring, and then Flair and Sting go back out to beat some ass. It's still a wild brawl, and Flair just beats the bejesus out of the heels with the branding iron. Things have finally calmed down. Flair looks ridiculous. He is a colorful mess in the post-match promo as he says he's just getting warmed up. He thanks Sting for helping and says he wants to wear Terry's Texas ass out as the show comes to a close. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. This is a great match. It's easily the best match of the night. I do want to give the slight edge to the I Quit match at Clash of the Champions New York Knockout. If you want to hear more about that, I did a review of it and you can check it out right here. I think, no, this match is still awesome though. Like Flair and Funk have amazing chemistry. They work so well together. The animosity could be felt in that ring, and that's what I really appreciated about it, and everything felt like a struggle. Again, really cool finish, really enjoyed that. I think that, yeah, they're much better in 89 than they were in, say, 2000. And if you want to see more about that, I also did a review of that match too. My grade for the Gab 1989 is an A. Now, you might look at the star ratings I did for some of these matches and say, how do you reach an A grade from that? The truth is, it's just a really fun show from top to bottom. I was never bored watching this show. And even though some matches are objectively, better or more interesting than others, I think they all served a purpose. They were all fun. I was thoroughly entertained. Like, every match felt different. And yeah, it was just a really good time. I think ending as strong as it did with Luger and Steamboat, with the War Games match, with Flair and Funk. I mean, that is just a killer 3-match combo there that really elevates this show for me. I think Great American Bash 89 is as good as advertised. If you've not seen it yet, you really should, because there is a lot of good stuff on this show. But what did you think of the 89 Great American Bash? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. And folks, the next time we come back to the Classic Review, we are going back to the Great American Bash. It's going to be a little bit different though. It's going to be WWE's version, and it's also going to be the year 2007. That will be interesting. But until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.